South Park has created a lot of parodies and made a lot of references, especially to horror films. And although the show's Halloween specials aren't as iconic as the ones from, say, The Simpsons' Treehouse of Horrors,
shut up, it's Halloween! This is my night!
There are some truly memorable ones that really stuck with us, and we decided we're gonna count down our 5 favorites. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and these are the top 5 South Park Halloween specials. For this list, we'll be discussing some of the most quoted and well-received episodes that are dedicated to being focused on Halloween, and all the fun antics that come along with it. Some of these episodes are creepy, some are ridiculous, and some were a cluster of both.
Oh yeah, Jack and Crack Witch Week, let's do this!
Number 5. Satan's Sweet 16. A parody of the show My Sweet 16, this became one of the most well-remembered South Park Halloween moments and absolutely earns its place on the list. And it's also another reminder that Satan is one of the most underrated South Park characters.
This is going to be the best Halloween ever!
Not to say that Satan himself isn't a popular character, being a focus of the first movie and slowly gaining more attention as the series continued, but this episode expanded on him in a really hilarious way. He's shown to have a good understanding for human behavior and has a high standard of what counts as sin and temptation. While he had struggled with his own worth and identity in the past, he has become more stable in recent seasons. But in this episode, Satan took on the role of a spoiled brat.
Well, I have to invite celebrities or else my party won't be cool.
Throwing a fit to ensure that his party was perfect, all while dressed up as a young Britney Spears. Luckily, he managed to get his act together and not act like the young teens Matt and Trey were making fun of. But seeing Satan spend the majority of the episode wanting to make sure he was the hottest and doing things Diddy didn't was amusing.
It's all about me!
Plus, having 3 serial killers doing their own version of the Stooges in their subplot, and seeing Butters struggle with an angry Biggie Smalls made it a chaotic holiday episode. Like the other spots on this list, it had all the fun charm of the holiday while still making reference to other episodes in the season and staying true to the characters presented. There are a lot of shows out there that make Halloween specials or collections where they play it as a sort of separate universe to the one we normally deal with. But South Park stands apart. They keep the overall story arcs the same, but throw some Halloween fun into the mix to help progress the show. Number 4. FaceTime or Blockbust. We have to include this mess of an episode. Many of those that have enjoyed South Park over the years have a good memory of Blockbuster still being popular before streaming services such as Netflix. That made this episode not only a nostalgic one for its references to both Blockbuster and the movie The Shining, but also made it something the older audience members cringed at. Seeing the residents of South Park at their worst over the holiday, it was a memorable episode. Randy's reaction to being in denial about no one using Blockbuster anymore was a pretty relatable one at the time. To start, anyway. But we all know by now that any situation with Randy is going to become an exaggerated nightmare. And this time was no different, with the older Marsh soon spiraling into insanity. He began to hallucinate and see people in the store, and started talking to employees who weren't there, keeping his family within the Blockbuster and insisting they couldn't leave because they were needed. On the other side of the spectrum, we also had the children acting a bit irrational about their own situation. Stan, being stuck in the video store with his family, was left with the option to FaceTime trick-or-treat with his friends, only to be held hostage and acting as if he was being tortured when the screen was cut. He even acted like he was knocked out when the tablet was ditched and the screen was nursed back to health. Stan, without a doubt, gets his overdramatic nature from his dad. Number 3. Tegrity Farms Special. Shown in one of the newer seasons, this was a hit-or-miss episode with a lot of people. A mummy with an unhealthy obsession with Butters, Shelly creating a spell to take out her anger on everyone else, and a town overrun with zombies. We've already mentioned Randy and his overreactions, but this special made him come off as not only ridiculous, but inconsiderate. Throughout the episode, he talks about how Shelly's intolerance for marijuana is damaging the family. When his daughter stands her ground, lashing out and trying to destroy the crop, his response is to have the police lock her in a holding cell. It was already weird seeing pot-based zombies, the plant taking over the people it infected, but a decomposing Winnie the Pooh made it even more messed up. The whole thing was followed with cattle raised from the dead and Winnie the Pooh openly threatening Randy and Towley. But the final nail in the coffin? The fact that none of those horrible zombies were there, and it was just an effect of the Halloween special Randy was handing out.
Monsters, go back to hell!
While this episode did have mixed reviews, it did have a bunch of creepy elements while still holding true to the canon nature of the show. Butters gets wrapped up in crazy situations where he's seen as the bad guy even when he isn't. Randy goes overboard trying to express himself and his views, only for much of it to end up being just in his head. Shelley shows her distaste and anger about the predicament she's in and steps up to do something about it to expose that she was the one in the right. The mix of sensational and grounded is what makes South Park such a great show, and this episode, though chaotic, held true to that dynamic. Number 2. Witches. South Park has given a lot of commentary on social issues, but in one of the more recent seasons, they decided to express themselves with men in witches' attire, and the whole town left to deal with the madness of a single man driven by power. This quickly turned into a quoted moment among the fanbase, with the avoidance of the term witch hunt, a maddened Eric Cartman trying to get his girlfriend kidnapped, and a President Garrison saving the day. We're placing it second since not only the main plot, but also the subplot quickly became especially memorable for the fanbase. What once was a time of drinking Jack Daniels in Halloween outfits became a group being terrorized for the actions of one person.
Hey Sharon, did you see the box of Jack Daniels?
Not only is this a good point to make in general, but it especially works for a Halloween episode since a lot of groups of people are called out for being heathens and sinister for the actions of a small percentage of misguided people. On the other hand, we have an Eric and Heidi story, which is only a small part of their relationship arc. It's in this episode that Heidi realizes how Eric actually sees her, and the relationship between them turns into a more toxic one. But if we were left by a significant other to be kidnapped and possibly killed by a crazy witch, we would probably snap too. This special was a crazy one, but had a fun ending with Garrison being called on by the boys to use his connections and destroy the threat. We weren't expecting a laser to shoot down and disintegrate the crazed man, but it got the job done. Number 1. Killer Fish. This was an episode from one of the earliest seasons of South Park. While the parallel universe mix-up was weird, we want to mention this episode because of the fish Stan received from his aunt. Now, for those that may not recall this episode, it was a creepy one. The pet fish Stan had wound up being from an evil pet store that also led to the alternate universe that the good Cartman came from. The innocent-looking goldfish taunted Stan constantly, writing "kill" inside of his bowl, leaving victims in Stan's room and even drowning Kenny while Stan and Kyle tried to figure out what to do with it. But the creepiest part of this episode was Sharon's misunderstanding of what was happening. When she saw bodies in her son's room, she didn't listen to Stan's worries about the fish. Instead, she believed her son was the one doing the murders and was just blaming the deaths on the pet as a sort of defense mechanism.
It was the fish!
Her response to all this? She started hiding the bodies and smothering Stan with affection, trying to protect him from what she thought was his own evil actions. Now, Sharon is a good mom, especially when compared to many of the other parents in South Park. It makes sense that she would want to protect her son, but her method of doing so was almost as frightening as the pet itself. And for that reason, we're placing this episode as the best South Park Halloween special. But what do you think? What were the most memorable South Park Halloween specials? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, and make sure to binge our South Park Good to Evil video, where we break down the morality of all the characters in South Park. But most importantly, stay wicked.